Lennox Lewis begins by breaking down why he truly believes Terence Crawford can beat Canelo Alvarez. In his words, the fight is far more mental than physical. Lewis stresses that Crawford's greatest weapon is his boxing intelligence, his ability to adapt, and his remarkable understanding of the sport from a mental perspective. He explains that Crawford is a fighter who doesn't just rely on athletic ability. Instead, he approaches boxing like a chess match, always analyzing, adjusting, and making his opponent uncomfortable. According to Lewis, size is not going to be the deciding factor in this matchup. Canelo may be naturally bigger and stronger, but Crawford's tactical sharpness and his adaptability inside the ring allow him to neutralize physical advantages. That is why Lewis believes Crawford has the edge. In his view, Crawford's movement, ring awareness, and relentless desire to remain at the top of the sport make him a uniquely dangerous opponent. Lewis says he's got incredible talent and incredible IQ. He knows exactly what needs to be done to not just stay at the top, but to dominate at the top. His footwork, his movement, his elusiveness, and his high work rate make him a nightmare to deal with. The interviewer then asks Lewis if he thinks the fight is likely to go the distance or end inside the distance. Lewis admits that it is hard to predict because both fighters are capable of ending fights early, but he finds it an extremely intriguing matchup precisely because of the stylistic clash. Coach Bernie, Crawford's longtime trainer, then gives his perspective. He explains that what makes Crawford so dangerous is not simply that he can hit hard, but that his punches come with precision and sharpness that very few fighters possess. Bernie emphasizes that Canelo, despite his incredible resume, has not fought someone with Crawford's unique combination of hand speed, accuracy, and natural power. Bernie points out that when he describes Crawford's hands as being like bricks, he is not exaggerating. Crawford's raw punching strength, even while moving up in weight, is something opponents quickly realize is unlike anything they've faced before. He contrasts Crawford's sharp, fast, and unpredictable shots with the punches of fighters like Jamie Munguia or Edgar Berlanga, who are powerful but not sharp in the same sense. Bernie insists that those men throw punches that are easy to see coming, while Crawford's speed and precision make his shots almost invisible. He tells the audience that when Canelo steps in the ring with Crawford, he is going to experience something very different from the slower, bulkier opponents he has recently been facing. Bernie adds that anticipation for this fight is massive because Canelo is one of boxing's biggest stars, while Crawford is a superstar in his own right. The matchup represents something fans have long wanted to see: Canelo facing a slick, elusive, and highly intelligent fighter. Bernie acknowledges that Canelo has the power, experience, and name recognition, but he insists that what makes this fight so compelling is the clash of styles. He also admits that plenty of people want to see Crawford fail, but at the same time, many others genuinely want to witness greatness and believe Crawford can provide it. The discussion shifts to Amir Khan, who offers his perspective as someone who has shared the ring with both men. Khan explains that he respects Canelo's skill and accomplishments, but in his eyes, Crawford is simply hungrier at this stage of their careers. Khan insists that Crawford's determination and drive will play a decisive role. He highlights that Crawford still has plenty of energy, sharpness, and motivation, while Canelo, having already cemented his legacy, seems less fiery in recent fights. Khan references Canelo's performance against a Cuban opponent, noting that Canelo seemed content to coast, to collect a win without pushing himself to the same level as before. In contrast, Crawford is still climbing, still looking to prove himself at the highest possible stage, and Khan believes that desire makes all the difference. Khan also recalls sparring sessions with Crawford. He describes how tricky Crawford is inside the ring, how he is constantly adapting to different styles, and how he seems to get stronger and sharper as fights go on. For Khan, those experiences left a lasting impression. He explains that Crawford's ability to read and counter different approaches makes him incredibly difficult to deal with. Khan also adds a personal touch, mentioning how Crawford came to his camp multiple times, spending weeks with him, training alongside him, and offering advice. Those moments left Khan with great respect for Crawford as both a fighter and a person, which is why he always supports him. Trainer Breadman Edwards then provides his analysis, offering a reality check about some of the preparations being discussed. He talks about Canelo's decision to spar Jaron Ennis as part of his training camp for Crawford. Edwards makes it clear that while sparring is an important part of preparation, it is never the same as an actual fight. He explains that fighters spar for different reasons, to get a feel for a particular style, to sharpen their timing, or sometimes just to send a psychological message to an opponent. In this case, Canelo's sparring boots Ennis is as much about showing the public that he is taking Crawford seriously as it is about actually preparing for the fight. Breadman respects the decision, pointing out that Ennis is one of the most talented fighters in the world and a close stylistic comparison to Crawford. Both fighters switch stances seamlessly, fight effectively from orthodox and southpaw, and combine defense with explosive counterpunching. Breadman says that Canelo's sparring boots is the closest thing he can do to prepare for Crawford without actually fighting Crawford himself. But Edwards emphasizes that sparring will never replicate the real pressure of fighting under the lights, with millions watching, and with a legacy-defining fight on the line. Edwards elaborates on Ennis's unique qualities. He describes how Boots never seems to have a bad day in the gym, how he can go 12 rounds without slowing down, and how he has been consistently sharp for over a decade. He recalls how Ennis can train without sitting down between rounds, maintaining an astonishing pace. Edwards insists that sparring someone like Boots shows Canelo is taking Crawford seriously, but it should not be mistaken for a guarantee of success. Another analyst joins the conversation to explain why this sparring choice matters. He highlights that Ennis and Crawford both fight effectively from both stances, use slick defensive maneuvers, and turn defense into offense in unpredictable ways. Ennis is known for his ability to roll with punches and counter quickly, just as Crawford does. By sparring Ennis, Canelo is exposing himself to that same rhythm and unpredictability. However, the analyst again stresses that no sparring partner can ever replicate Crawford's timing and instinct, which are unique to him. The discussion then moves to concerns about Canelo's physical decline. Observers have noted that Canelo's speed, particularly his footwork, has slowed considerably as he's moved into his 30s. Analysts point out that even in his 20s, Canelo's footwork was never his strongest asset, often described as heavy or slow. Now at 34 or 35, those weaknesses are becoming more pronounced. Against bigger, slower opponents at super middleweight, Canelo's slower legs were not as much of an issue. But against a fighter as quick and elusive as Crawford, those limitations could prove costly. The analyst explains that if Canelo cannot cut off the ring effectively, he risks being outmaneuvered all night. Crawford's agility, his ability to create angles, and his consistent movement may leave Canelo chasing a target he cannot hit cleanly. While Canelo's power has often allowed him to bail himself out of difficult moments, that may not be enough if he cannot pin Crawford down. At this point, another voice in the discussion notes that Crawford may be undersized at 168 pounds, which creates risks of its own. He reminds the audience that Canelo has been fighting and defeating naturally bigger men for years, men who were strong, muscular, and accustomed to absorbing punches from larger opponents. Fighters like Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, and Billy Joe Saunders all brought size to the ring, yet Canelo was able to break them down. The analyst warns that Crawford, who is naturally a welterweight, will need to be extremely smart and careful, because if he tries to trade power shots with Canelo, the physical disadvantage could overwhelm him. He continues by comparing Canelo's previous opponents to Crawford. He notes that fighters like William Skull were physically imposing, with muscular frames and natural size advantages, yet Canelo handled them. If Canelo could take punches from those men and overpower them, it raises the question of how Crawford, much smaller in comparison, can manage that physicality. He cautions that Crawford cannot simply try to walk through Canelo, because that would be suicidal. Instead, Crawford will have to rely on his craft, his intelligence, and his ability to fight from the outside, using movement and angles to avoid being caught on the inside. The conversation then shifts toward the bigger picture. Regardless of who wins, the panelists agree that this fight has already carved a place in boxing history. The anticipation, the clash of legacies, and the stylistic intrigue have created an event unlike anything boxing has seen in recent years. They note that the fight being streamed globally on Netflix adds another layer, bringing the sport to millions of casual viewers who may not usually watch boxing. The crossover appeal is massive, especially with Dana White promoting the event alongside boxing executives. This unusual partnership between Netflix, UFC, and boxing further emphasizes the magnitude of the showdown. One of the commentators adds that for casual fans, this fight is as big as it gets. It represents two of the greatest fighters of their era meeting in the ring, with reputations, legacies, and pride on the line. He calls it a cultural moment, not just a sporting event. Fans across the world, whether they support Canelo or Crawford, understand the significance of what is about to take place. As the discussion closes, the panel agrees that this fight embodies everything people love about boxing: the clash of styles, the unpredictability, and the chance to witness greatness. While some favor Canelo's power and experience, others believe Crawford's intelligence, hunger, and adaptability will carry the day. The debate continues to rage, but one thing is certain: on September 13th, the world will be watching when Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford finally step into the ring to settle one of the most anticipated matchups of this generation.